Hi everyone, my name is Meizi. I'm currently working in a family service center, which is one of the community-based social service agencies in Singapore. I will be sharing with you about my project, which is a group work conducted with women survivors of violence. I've used Natalie Rutland Wood's Recipes for Life methodology and made some local adaptations to suit the context that I'm working in. This women's group work was held in a 2 days, 1 night camp concurrently with the group work for children, named My Happy Ending. This group consists of 4 women who have been receiving casework and counselling services in this family service centre for at least 6 months, and they were invited by their caseworkers to attend this group work. These women have diverse backgrounds in terms of their primary language spoken, educational level, and current socio-economic status, and they had experienced or are currently experiencing violence from their male partners or adult sons. Using narrative ideas, I was interested in facilitating the second story development of resilience and resistance towards gender violence. So I consulted my clients about the situations and what sustains them during these hard times. Many of them spoke about the love and care for their children. And as I further consulted them on the metaphor that significantly represents the love and care for their children, many of them spoke about food and cooking. Food is a key feature in the Singaporean culture, common across the 4 main racial groups in Singapore. Given the cultural diversity in Singapore, we also often see fusions and new creations in Singapore food recipes that provide new meaning and identity associations. Hence, food recipe is a representative food culture metaphor in the Singapore context that the participants would be able to relate to easily. The creation of personal food recipes and recipes for surviving hardship would help to restore the woman's preferred sense of identity and personal agency by honoring their skills, knowledge, values, and beliefs in surviving hardships and facilitate a second story development. I will be introducing the metaphor of uninvited ingredients in food to represent and externalize the social discourses that support gender violence and victimhood and further deconstruct them. I will also be introducing the use of 2 different types of outsider witnesses, namely introduced audience and known audience, to provide further validation and thickening of the woman's alternative stories of resilience and resistance towards gender violence. Lastly, I will be incorporating a signature Singaporean food dish named rojak as a form of definitional ceremony and collective documentation of the woman's skills and knowledge. The participants were first invited to talk about their favourite food and the memories and special meanings that were associated with these food. These questions shown were used to facilitate the discussion. One participant shared about how her favourite dish, Hainanese chicken rice, reminds her of her father's commitment and care towards her and her siblings, as her father used to buy Hainanese chicken rice for them as breakfast every Sunday. The participants further shared how these food recipes have been passed down from one generation to another as a family legacy, and they would like to continue with this family tradition. In part 2, the participants were invited to create their own recipes for life in responding to gender violence and surviving hardship. The sections in this Recipes for Life group work include ingredients, sourcing, methods, tips and serving, and the questions used to facilitate these sections have also been referenced from Natalie Rutland Wood's Recipes for Life. I've introduced a new section, Uninvited Ingredients, and this will be elaborated later on. These questions shown were used to elicit the participants' skills, knowledge, beliefs, values, hopes and dreams that supported them in getting through the domestic violence experience. Some of the key ingredients listed among the participants include bravery, support from friends and family, patience, positivity, hopes and dreams as a mother to the children. The participants were then asked to trace the history behind the ingredients listed earlier. This is also the place where meaningful and rich linkages with family and cultural traditions can be made. As mentioned by Michael White, by richly tracing the histories or storylines of people's skills, knowledges, hopes and dreams, it can further contribute to a renewed sense of identity. This is also based on the idea of identity as an association of life, where the woman's skills are connected with other significant members in their life. With reference to Natalie Rutland Wood's recipes for life, the following questions were asked to guide the participants. The participants were then asked to talk about how they would use and bring out the best in their ingredients. They were then invited to share how they have used these ingredients to better manage with the difficult situations that they have faced. The identification of such unique outcomes provided an entry point to reauthoring conversations that helped to thicken the alternative stories that were beginning to emerge. The participants were then encouraged to further share what these skills, values, and hopes suggest about them as a person and how they would see themselves using these skills in the future. Many of the women who have experienced gender violence in their intimate relationships often experience an internalized sense of self-blame that appears to be a product of social discourses at work. For instance, when the participants were invited to list some of the common cultural beliefs about women's role in relation to the men's, family violence, and women who experience family violence, many of them spoke about how the society has certain expectations of women as the good wife and good mother, who should spend most of her time at home taking care of the children and the household needs. When women fail to perform up to these expectations and responsibilities, they would then be negatively judged by others as lousy mother or bad wife. As a result, women often take on the responsibility and blame when things do not turn out as expected. This further reinforces a sense of self-blame and internalized problem perception. I was interested in externalizing and deconstructing the social discourses that support gender violence and victimhood so as to help the women see the problem as separate from their identity and therefore be able to experience a greater sense of personal agency and empowerment in reducing the influence of the problem on their lives. Using the food recipe metaphor, I've chosen uninvited ingredients such as food bacteria as the externalized and personified problem to help participants see the problem as separate from their identity and recipe for life. Food bacteria cannot be seen with our naked eyes and often enter our food without our conscious awareness. Just like how social discourses often exert influence on our perception of our lives and identity without our conscious awareness. By externalizing social discourses that support gender violence as a form of food bacteria, or uninvited ingredient in our recipe, participants were able to easily see and safely discuss the effects of these social discourses on their skills, values, hopes and dreams, and their self-identity. With reference to Ryan Greenwald's Troublemaker cards, McPhee and Chaffee's work with women survivors of gender violence, sexual assault, and the ideas that have been gathered from the participants, we listed a total of 5 social discourses that have the greatest influence on the participants' lives. Participants further deconstructed the particular social discourse or externalized uninvited ingredient that they have selected using the following questions. These deconstruction questions have been referenced from Michael White's Statement of Position Map 1, and they were crafted to help the participants characterize and obtain an experience near definition of the problem, map the effects of the problem, evaluate the effects of the problem, and justify the evaluation. Participants identified the source of these uninvited ingredients from their male partners, the society, friends, and relatives. And some of the common responses to how the selected uninvited ingredients affect their lives, recipe, and self-identity include sense of helplessness, sense of isolation and being alone, unable to achieve their hopes and dreams, sense of powerlessness, blame, lowered self-confidence, increased self-doubt. When the participants were invited to take a position as they considered whether they liked the uninvited ingredients plans for their lives, all the participants were firm in saying no, and further shared their justifications and plans to resist the uninvited ingredients' influence on their lives. One participant came up with her preferred identity of womanship, that represents independence, confidence, bravery, and empowerment. She further shared about her determination to work towards this preferred identity and some steps that she has already taken, including raising 2 young children on her own without seeking maintenance support from her ex-husband. Such acts of resistance and preferred identity development illustrates the double-story development of women's active responses to gender violence and moves away from the single dominant story of the effects of gender violence and victimhood on these women. Natalie Rutland Wood also talked about how food mistakes could be turned into opportunities for new learnings and discoveries that could be included as a tip in the food recipes. Using the concept of uninvited ingredients, such as food bacteria and the resulting food mistake of fermentation and creation of new food items such as yogurt and cheese, as an illustration, participants were then invited to further think about mishaps in their lives that have generated positive learning outcomes. They were also asked where they have learned this tip from. 2 participants shared about not giving up and believe in their own strength, even if they feel defeated after the mishap. They also shared that they had learned this spirit of not giving up from their family members and culture. All the participants further shared about building a community of support to reduce a sense of isolation and loneliness that they often experience in domestic violence situations as another important tip to include in their recipe. This community of support in itself becomes another platform for more tips and resources to be shared. The participants were then asked to think of a name for their recipes for life and whom they would like to share it with. All the participants mentioned that they would like to share it with their children. Some of them would like to share it with their friends and other family members, including siblings and parents. One of the participants would like to share her recipe with other women who have been through similar situations. And this is Chef Karen's recipe for a good life. After the participants completed their own recipes for life, they took turns to present and share their recipes in a large group, with the other participants and group work facilitators acting as outsider witnesses. This outsider witness group consists of both reflecting team, which is made up of professional colleagues who were the group work facilitators, and the other women who had experienced gender violence in their intimate relationships. All the members in this outsider witness group are unknown to the presenter and makes up an introduced audience group. According to Michael White, outsider witnessing as a form of definitional ceremony are rituals that acknowledge and regrade people's lives. It is also believed to be one of the most powerful tools in narrative practice that contributes to the thickening of the alternative story and identity. The participants were first briefed on the rules of listening and responding to one another's stories. In this outsider witness group, there was one main facilitator who interviewed the rest of the group members with questions that were guided by the 4 categories of inquiry in outsider witness practice. When the outsider witness group members were first invited to share about what stood out to them, different members resonated with different things. The diversity of responses in this large outsider witness group that comprised of 8 members provided a more varied range of acknowledgements of the presenter's alternative story. Apart from the diversity of responses, when one member provided her response and a significant number of other group members resonated with her response, it also provided a much richer and louder voice of acknowledgement and validation of the presenter's skills, knowledge, value, or commitment. The responses from this relatively large outsider witness group also enabled the participants to experience a sense of catharsis, where they were able to have a new perspective on their life and self-identity, experience a familiarity with their knowledge and skills that they were previously hardly aware of. As the participants were further interviewed on how the outsider witness responses have made a difference to their lives, many of them shared about how these responses have been very encouraging and they are more motivated to work towards their hopes and dreams. As mentioned by Michael White, it is the audience response to the stories told and performed in these platforms that is verifying of these stories. It is the audience responses and acknowledgement of the identity claims expressed in these stories that is authenticating of the identity claims. Rojak is a traditional fruit and vegetable salad mixture and one of the signature Singaporean dishes. Rojak means mixture in Malay language. More significantly, rojak is also a colloquial term used to describe our multicultural background and mixed languages to form a unique Singlish language that also represents a sense of unity in diversity, or communitas. The different types of rojak recipes could also be a metaphor used to represent our lives, where we have the ability to decide on the specific ingredients that we prefer to add in and mix together according to our preferred identity or tastes and ways of living and sense of identity. The participants were then invited to select the most significant or representative ingredient from their own recipes for life that they would like to present and contribute to the collective document Recipes for Life and Rojak of Life. Each one of them selected one actual food ingredient from the rojak recipe to represent their significant Recipes for Life ingredient, prepared the food ingredient, and then shared a story with the rest of the group. The following questions were used to guide the participants in sharing their representative ingredient from their Recipes for Life. These questions have been referenced from David Denborough's article, Collective Documents as a Response to Collective Trauma. 1. What is the name of this special skill, knowledge, or value that sustains you or your family through difficult times such as the domestic violence experience? 2. What is the story about this skill, knowledge, or value? Share a story about a time when this has made a difference to you or others. 3. What is the history of this skill, knowledge, or value? How do you learn this and who do you learn it from? 4. Is this skill linked in some ways to collective traditions or cultural traditions? Are there proverbs, sayings, stories, songs, or images from your family, community, or culture with which these skills and knowledges are linked? Finally, the participants took part in a ceremony where they put in and mixed all the rojak food ingredients together to form a rojak dish. The representative ingredients or skills, stories, history, and collective traditions were then documented to form the following collective document. This collective recipe document aims to address both the effects of trauma and the effects of isolation often experienced in the context of gender violence. By gathering collective voice and effort in responding to gender violence, it helps the participants to see gender violence as a social issue that requires social action. It helps them to move away from internal understanding and problem perception as well as self-blame. Such collective voices, especially when it is reread to the participants, further creates a sense of communitas that helps to reduce a sense of isolation as shared skills, knowledges, values, and histories of endurance and sustenance are also acknowledged apart from the shared suffering. It also fosters a sense of solidarity as the women stand up together to the effects of gender violence and trauma. And this is an excerpt from the Rojak of Life collective document. The children of these women were then invited to be a known audience to their mother's cooking and preparation of their recipes for life. The women participants began by selecting various types of craft materials representing their various ingredients and name of their recipe. Different types of craft materials with different texture, color, shape, size, and smell were provided to symbolize these skills, knowledges, values, and hopes, because I was hoping that these participants would be able to relate to the ingredients and methods of preparation more easily as they connect with their other senses, such as the sense of smell, sight, and touch. Actual ingredients, actual cooking utensils were set up, and the women were also dressed up in chef outfits with an apron and chef hat to fit the theme of Master Chef. The main group work facilitator doubled up as the Master Chef cooking show host and introduced all the women participants as Master Chefs to their unique recipes for life. While the participants prepared the dishes, the host went around to interview the different chefs about their own unique recipes, ingredients, methods of cooking, and whom they would like to share their recipes with. While the children watched, they started cheering their mothers with, "Go, go, mommy!" And it was a heartwarming scene. When the women participants were interviewed later on, after the cooking show, on how they felt about the experience and the impact on them as they received their children's responses, all of them shared that they felt very touched, encouraged, and more motivated to work towards their hopes and dreams of nurturing and bringing up their children well. When the children were interviewed by the host to give their outsider witness response to their mother's recipes for life, all the children reflected that they like their mother's recipes simply because it is prepared by their mummy. Special personalized certificates that documented each woman's skills, values, beliefs, knowledges, hopes, and commitments were given to the participants at the end of the group work. These certificates were prepared by the co-facilitators who had been taking down notes and rescuing the woman's words during the Recipes for Lives and in uninvited ingredients exercises. Each certificate also documented each woman's commitment to the specific acts of resistance against the uninvited ingredients' influence on their lives. This certificate giving not only serves as another form of definitional ceremony, where the woman's preferred identity are elaborately acknowledged and honoured. It also serves as another form of narrative therapeutic documentation, where participants can refer to it when they would like to remind themselves of the skills, knowledges, hopes, and commitments that they have. According to David Epstein, a good therapeutic document is worth 4.5 sessions of good therapy. The women then proceeded to hand their completed recipes for life document to their children as a representation of passing on their skills, knowledges, values to their children as a form of legacy and sharing. This helps the woman to further experience a sense of contribution to others' lives as they shared their recipes for life with their significant others. And this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.